cloud. Get the hell out of here. Why am
Okay, I think we can start. Welcome everybody. I would like to welcome two filmmakers. First, I would like to welcome Mark, and I'm going to botch your last name, so I'll allow you to pronounce it.
It's Pernerweski.
Pernerweski, who directed and produced My Boys of Summer. And we also have Angela Pinaglia. I hope I've said it correctly.
Pretty close. Pinaglia, the G is silent. Thank you.
Italian, right?
Yes.
And Angela produced and directed Life in Synchro. And I brought these two filmmakers together because their films are both about sports, but not just sports, but about community. And the community that evolves when you have teams that are very dedicated to their sport and bond in a very special way. And I'd love to talk with both of you about that. So before we dig in, I'd love to have you both introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of background. Tell us about your film and why you made it. So let's start with Angela.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is my first feature-length documentary. This is my second career being in film. My first career was in education, but I always wanted to be a filmmaker. And finally, I figured out how to do it. And at 31, I packed up, left Miami, moved to Washington, D.C. to go to American University and study filmmaking. I got an MFA there. And this film to me is a culmination of my decade of my 30s. I just turned 40 this summer, and I started, studying filmmaking at 31. And so to me, it's extra special because this is a dream that I had as a young person. I was finally able to achieve it. And just the way I got into synchronized skating, I'm not a skater, I'm not an athlete, I'm from Miami, Florida. I hate the cold. And I had a friend who eventually became the producer on the film. She was a synchronized skater, and I met her at American University. And for years, she'd say, "Oh, I'm a synchronized skater. Oh, I'm a national champ." Like, she would tell me these things, and literally they'd go in one ear and out the other. And then I finally saw it, and I go, "Nicole, why didn't you tell me?" And she's like, "I've been trying to tell you." And it was the most dynamic thing I had ever seen. No one had done a film about it. I'm like, this is it. This is the film that I'm finally going to make. And that was back in 2017. So, and I'm here now. So anyway, so I'm very happy to be here with both of you this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you. Mark, tell us about yourself and your background and your film.
So if you add 10 years to everything that Angela just said, that's pretty much my story. I'm actually currently a high school teacher, and I would love to be a documentary filmmaker when I grow up. So a few years ago, I was thinking, I wonder if there's a way to teach without actually having to go into the classroom at the crack of dawn every day. So I started a pokey little YouTube channel, which had some general knowledge videos. How do you tell how far away the stars are? How come Andrew Carnegie was so mean to his employees? So it was all kinds of different topics. And it was fun to make, but nobody ever watched it. So that kind of got put on the back burner. And then about 3 years ago, one of my students, when we were talking about, oh, what do you have going on this weekend? He said, oh, my players are arriving. I said, Alex, what are you talking about? Oh, my family hosts players from the Danbury Westerners every summer. And so I asked him more about the team. He said, college students who are playing college baseball come to Danbury and various other cities in New England to allow scouts to watch them pitching and hitting in a wooden bat league, because that's very important. College uses metal bats, the major leagues use wooden bats. So scouts really want to see how they perform in that kind of atmosphere. So I said, oh, okay, you know what? I've seen the Danbury Westerners sign every time I go down the highway. I'm always on the way to somewhere else. I think, oh, I should really check them out. I'm going to do it. So I went down there and couldn't believe how they, on any game night, the volunteers transform the sleepy little city park into pretty much a professional baseball experience. And to top it off, the quality of play was outstanding. Shh. Ugh, dogs. So I don't know what that was. All right. So I said, if the quality of the baseball is this good, and I've been living here for 15 years without knowing about it, I bet there's a lot of other people in the community who also don't know about it. Let me try to teach them. And so I called Shelly, who's Alex's mother, and she and the board were really enthusiastic about the program. So this is my first shot at a full-length feature documentary. I followed the team throughout a full summer from when they first arrived in Danbury, through the trials and tribulations of the season, some behind the scenes fun stuff, some of the tensions they encountered, and then it finishes off on the last day of the season with a signboard that says, "See you in the summer of 2020." And we all know that didn't happen.
Mm. Yeah, that must be very hard for everyone. You lose momentum, and people, they're so used to seeing everyone every summer, and it's something that they look forward to. It must be really, really difficult this year.
I think that added to the appeal, because I don't know if synchronized skating is going to be affected by COVID, but this is something that people did that they can't do anymore. And I think there's that nostalgia, that kind of poignancy to this, because, oh, wait, it actually can't happen. And we hope it even happens next summer.
Right.
Well,
Angela,
I just want to comment because this past season, the one that just ended, there were skaters that didn't go to the world championship, that it was a culmination of a career, and it was going to be held in New York in Lake Placid, and people have retired because, unlike baseball and a lot of other sports, I think synchronized skating doesn't have that financial support, and it's really expensive. I know all sports are expensive, don't get me wrong, but this one in particular just requires a lot from the individual. So people have left. And Emily's sister in the film, Katie, she was going to be competing on US soil for the world championship, and that opportunity left her, and she's retired, and now she'll never have it again. And, so it's very painful. I think I know the pandemic has affected a lot of people, but for the athletes, and you think about the Olympians, man, it's like a lifetime of preparation on pause, and some people opportunity lost. So it's definitely sad.
Yeah, in the NECBL, the league that they play in, you cannot play in the league unless you have college eligibility left. And these athletes lost, many of them, their senior year, and now they can't play in these showcase leagues because of the way the rules are set up. It's really bad timing for so many.
Mm. So tell me how, speaking of nostalgia and a lot of these activities on pause right now because of COVID, what's the reaction by the players and the skaters when they watch this film? Tell me a little bit about that. Angela, let's start with you.
Well, this film only exists because of the synchronized skating community. We ran 2 Indiegogos, and they have obviously financially supported the making of this film because they wanted the film to be out there to help promote the sport. So they're very, very excited. Back in May, so obviously, talk about everyone being affected by the pandemic. Our film festival screenings in person canceled, right? So, you've been building up to this for years. Like, this is it. This is my moment. I'm going to get my movie out there, and that pause. And so we were lucky to get 2 in-person screenings at the beginning of March before everything shut down. And then around May, I was like, man, film festivals weren't sure yet what they were doing in the April and May time. People were just straight up postponing or canceling. But we had the opportunity to do an online screening with the Film Festival Alliance and a lot of their member festivals. And the reason I bring this up is that we had a great turnout. We sold $17,000 worth of tickets for a week on online screening. And I know that was a lot of my synchronized skating community. And they were just so excited about it. And, I still wish we could be in a theater and I could share this movie with synchronized skaters. And I was able to do that once in DC. There's a big DC team up here. And so a lot of that theater was filled with skaters. And for them to see themselves, and also not in the way they expect to see it, because My film is a little different. I started like you, Mark. I was going to follow a season of like a competitive season, but it kind of became something more because I saw there was all these other levels of synchronized skating. There's these little girls, there's these older women, there's like these open masters. And so I'm also showing the sport in a way you don't think about, especially if you're on a competitive like path, like I'm going to become a national champion. And I think they actually really enjoyed that too, to see these older women, to see that they themselves can have a future in the sport if they choose to. So we've had tons of support. I still hope maybe in 2021 we'll all sit together in a theater and see it together. But
well, I watched Angela's film when the festival started, and I just thought, wow, there's so many parallels to mine in that here are people who know that they're not going to join a professional team after they're done, and yet they love it so much that they'll keep skating into the one woman said, I thought I would stop when I was 50, then I thought I would stop when I was 60, and then here I am still going. And it's amazing how much that community holds together when there's no active participation. There can't be. I was talking to Josh Parrow, the manager, and before the season, and he said, for 2/3 of these players, this New England College Baseball League summer is the highest level they'll ever play at. So when the season is over, maybe they'll join beer league softball, maybe they'll coach somewhere, but this is it for so many of them. And I think that's mainly the reaction that I'm getting. This is going to be their keepsake to remember, wow, this was a great time. The volunteers especially are the ones that have, I think, reached out to me the most to say, you know what, we've been doing this for 25 years for the Westerners now. We don't get paid for it. We do it because we love it. And it's so amazing that somebody's finally recognizing the contribution that we give to the players and to the community, but they would do it even if I weren't recording them.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about the community and how important this is to the people who are involved in these sports. It's not just about the sport. It's also about friendships, community, being there for each other. It's about the town that you're representing or the team. So let's talk a little bit about that. Let's dive into that. Angela, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I guess at the beginning, because I was totally new to the sport, I didn't know what to expect, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is going to be like any other sport. And I'm not an athlete, so I don't really know what that's going to be like. But I expected it to be very competitive. And it wasn't. Don't get me wrong. People are in it to win. But there was so much like clapping for the other team, because it's such a small world, right? And I think it's really synchronized skating versus the world, because they're trying to get that recognition and validation that I think they very much deserve. So there's just like this tons of support. And as to the community, I couldn't figure out what made this sport special. And I think every sport is unique in its own way. But for me, as an outsider looking into the world of synchronized skating, I'm like, man, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something extra special here. And it took me time to figure out. And I think this is what it is. I don't know, but this is my hypothesis. I think, obviously it's a very female dominated sport. And so the angle that I came into filming is from an angle of female empowerment. And I think that's, imagine your coach is a woman, you're being, everyone you skate with is a woman, you yourself become a coach and many times, and you're coaching younger women. It's like generation upon generation upon generation of women supporting each other. And then add to the fact that when you're synchronized skating, you are physically connected to people. So you feel the person, this is what I've been told, you feel the anxiety that the other person may be feeling or the excitement, and it like travels down the line. And I think the fact that it's all women, the fact that they're so often connected, and the fact that it really is never about one individual person, it is about the collective, right? Like you should never stand out in a synchronized skating team unless it's been designed that in the routine, you're like, like kind of a focal point. There's no jerseys, no number 21, there's no shortstop. It is literally 16 of us moving together in synchronization to achieve this one goal. And you're working toward that all season. Man, imagine if we live like that as a society, and like imagine, and that's why I'm like, you know, and I think that's why community feels extra powerful. And then of course, you know, the families are really supportive, you know, the fans that are diehards love it. And like Mark said, like the volunteers, people, they are passionate about things. And that's what I was also really amazed to find, people living with such passion and not expecting anything in return. That blew my mind.
That's amazing. Mark, is that, tell me about your experience.
There, again, there's a lot of interesting overlap with baseball, because even though you can have stars that have different skills, you could be the best fielder in the world and the ball might never be hit to you. You're the best hitter in the world and you only bat once every 3 innings. And so what you described, Angela, about you feel the ups and downs of the team. Teams get on streaks, teams get superstitious, and there's a whole storyline in my film about what happens when that team that started off really hot, coming together from all over the country, not knowing each other before June 1st, winning a game on a walk-off home run on June 5th during the first evening, and then all of a sudden going cold, and nobody can figure out why. What do they do with that? And at the same time, so those are the players who are not only representing the team, but each one of them is going to go back to a college team that's not made up of the people they played with over the summer. So there's a weird individual dynamic at the same time, because somebody's coach from Notre Dame might say, well, I don't want him pitching more than so many innings or whatever. So, you know, somebody like Josh has to balance wanting to put a winning team on the field for the players and the fans, because nobody likes to lose, while at the same time allowing each player to develop in the way that he needs as an individual. So the guy that needs the most work might play a lot of innings, and that might cost them some games. On top of all that, the volunteers still have to get the field ready, even if things are losing. Sherry, the team mom, she calls herself, goes out every single day and gets food donations from local supermarkets and places like that, and feeds the home team and the visiting team and all the umpires. And she's doing that whether it's raining, whether it's hot, whether they're winning, whether they're losing. And so just to see that dedication from the support side to allow the players to develop as they need to be was something that really took my breath away when I started. I had pictured following a couple of players. Now Eli is going into his 3rd game. He hasn't been able to win, but maybe if he can pull this one out. And the minute I started, I said, wow, the play on the field is secondary. It's about how everybody works to make this possible. And so I included a little both, but it's much more heavy on how does everybody get this product on the field.
Right. Let's talk about some of the people in your films. Tell me about some of your main characters, people, and what are they doing today? Let's start with Angela. You can go ahead first.
Sure. Well, Emily is still not skating. You know, she graduated college and she's working. She's in adulthood essentially, and I think that's one thing I wish maybe in hindsight I could have made it a little bit better, but my movie's pretty good. But I still think of like, oh, like, you know, I've been sitting with it. I wish I could have really made clear that once you leave like a certain stage of your life, it's really hard to maintain synchronized skating at that really competitive level. You got to work, right? You don't have a bunch of hours to dedicate to first your own personal development and then to work with the team. So anyway, so she's in adulthood right now. And Peggy, you know, Peggy is still kind of coaching a little bit on the side, and Heidi and the Downeasters are still skating together. And you know, they are having a season. And so that's interesting. Like, as the rinks have been opening up in different states, you know, whether they were, you know, it's been a staggered kind of opening across the country, but they are moving forward a little bit of a modified season for U.S. figure skating. And they're not holding as many competitions, and some of them are going to be virtual, which I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, honestly, but I've been told that's going to happen. So yeah, I think, you know, people, but even if they're not skating, I think, you know, everyone's still very much following the sport. So, you know, Emily, you know, is still, you know, very much in it and very active still as she can be. So yeah.
What is the cost for being a synchronized skater?
Yeah, well, I think that depends on the level. So, early on, first you got to learn how to skate, right? So you got to look into the investment of just learning how to be a good skater. And, there, I don't know all the rules, but like to go up, you've got to pass certain like moves in the fields test, and there's certain levels that go into that. And so you've got to first develop as an individual skater, and you have to have your own like individual like skating lessons and practices and maintaining of your own equipment like blades and skates and all that. And then there's the team associated fees. So especially with like the teams that are traveling, my understanding is like if you're Team USA, your travel is covered, but there's still the cost of being a team. So I've been told anywhere from like $10,000 to $20,000 a year. Because you're looking at the high end teams, it's like the dresses, the lace, like all, they're very beautiful, like costumes are like $600. I don't know, some of the teams definitely have sponsors that kind of offset the costs, it's not all coming out of pocket, but it definitely is expensive.
Wow. So Mark, tell me about some of the characters or the people in your film. Where are they now? And
yeah, so it's interesting because the baseball season for the volunteers and the board is quite cyclical. It's very much like we do in teaching. I meet the kids in September. I take them through all of these adventures in history, teaching them to write. And then just when I'm getting to know them well, I turn them loose in June and then have to start the whole process all over again in the fall. So as soon as the season ends, the board, the general manager, the president are working to find out who's going to be available for next year. So it turns out that 4 of the real characters, not just characters who appeared in it, but they had some character and add to the film. Christian Allegretti, Joe Vale, Matt Zaffino, and Cam Masterman, because they were younger in 2019, they are at least preliminarily on the 2021 roster. So I would like, when those practices and the season starts in the spring, reconnect with them and find out, okay, how's it been? What was your college season like? Things like that. Josh Parrow, who was the manager of the Westerners for, I believe, 5 years, got the head coaching job at Hudson Valley Community College in Troy. And so he's gone on to be very successful. And the person I've kept in touch with the most is Sherry Wessel, the team mom. And she was emailing me right before this Zoom started. I said, well, how did you spend the last summer? You've been doing this thing every day, dawn to dusk for these players for the last 10 years. And she said, I went out every single day and I walked the field. Just waiting for it to start again. So there's a big gap in everybody's life without this thing to do every day. However, the anti-hero in my film, which was the field, which was awful. Good news is the city of Danbury has finally ponied up the money that was raised in a bond issue several years ago and has given the players a new playing field was supposed to be the 2020 season. So 2021 is going to be the very first year with a brand new resurfaced Rogers Park. So if my filming this had anything to do with pushing that along, I'm pretty happy about that.
That's great. So before we take questions, I'd love to know what you're both working on or thinking about, planning to do after this film. And obviously you're so busy doing the film festival circuit, but would love to know what you have in the works if you're willing to share. Angela, let's start with you.
Well, it's funny. I still feel like I'm very much still in life in Synchro because, obviously the festivals, but also like working on getting it on PBS and like educational distribution, because I still think like, yeah, I think the movie I made was good, it's pretty good, but what I really think the opportunity is to use it to really increase awareness about the sport. So I'm very committed, like how can we get this in front of as many people as possible? And what are the different avenues to do that, which is a time consuming process. Like every step along the way, anybody who's made a movie, it's like, it never ends. But I'm happy to still be doing that. And then, because I've still been very much like kind of working on like this distribution stuff, I haven't fully developed anything. Well, I've got things in the works, but nothing like that great that I can like really pitch right now. But a couple documentaries, one about this river in Baltimore City. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight. It's the Jones Falls. Anyway, it's like a forgotten river that really powered Baltimore City. So it's a historical documentary, but also looking at how it's almost like urban decay and how we interact with the river. Like they built an interstate over it and everything. Then I've also got a documentary on elderly folks, Latino elderly folks. And lastly, I'm working on a script, a romantic comedy. So got a couple things.
Exciting.
Yeah.
That's great. Mark, what have you got cooking?
First, I just wanted to say I was so happy that, and I understand the world is broken and we have a lot of stuff, but when I saw Angela's movie and it was such a positive documentary, you know, rather than, oh no, the rivers are polluted and all that, it made me so happy because I tried to bring a positive thing to it. And so thank you for having that in there because I really enjoyed that kind of spin on things. I also would like to get my Boys of Summer onto at least local TV. So just like me, other people can be educated about what a cool thing Danbury has going with the Westerners. And I'm not really, because this is the first time I've done anything like this, I don't know much about the process. So I need to start asking around maybe public access TV and things like that. In the future, I would like to stay along the theme of people who have these incredibly niche passions and they devote a lot of their spare time and a lot of their spare money and a lot of their spare energy to things that people outside of the community have absolutely no idea about. I mean, everybody, even if you're not a baseball fan, people know that baseball exists. I didn't even know synchronized skating existed until I saw yours. So that's part of it. And I'd like to, I feel a lot of the things that people do on social media nowadays are really exclusionary to people who aren't in their communities. And so that's why I'd like to show why people are obsessed with going to different pubs and playing cornhole, or why there are college athletes who, instead of going out for the soccer team, are on the Quidditch team, which is a made-up game from Harry Potter and things like that. So those are my ideas right now, and I'm starting to develop those as we speak.
That's great. I mean, it goes back to the community thing and, you know, developing friendships, lifelong friendships with people, and just, you know, we've gotten so used to being, to socializing online, and we've, you know, and now we really feel it in this pandemic, how important those in-person relationships are. And these kinds of sports help bring people together. You see it in square dancing, you see it in bowling, you see it, my husband plays underwater rugby, talk about a niche sport that nobody's heard of.
Maybe I'll be filming him soon, because that seems like exactly the type of thing I want to look at.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was a thing until you said that.
Exactly. So where else are your films being seen? Obviously, people can watch your films until I think it's 11:59
midnight tonight. Yeah.
Night. After this festival, where else can people see your films? Angela.
Yeah, so we got a couple more screenings left. I feel like our festival circuit is kind of winding down. So we're playing a Fort Lauderdale Film Festival starting next, like 2 weeks from now. And then there's still a couple festivals that we're kind of waiting to hear. We'll play at a couple more next year that were, you know, festivals that were postponed till 2021. But honestly, I think hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be coming to a PBS station near you, like March, April of next year. That's what we're working to finalize those details. And we're not selling copies of the movie yet, but if you're interested, you could go to our website and sign up to be on our mailing list, so that when we start taking pre-orders, you could be notified of that. And of course, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Life and Synchro.
Yeah, cool. Mark, what about you?
The plan last year was for the team to take the movie and arrange for some screenings in Danbury, so that they could use it as a fundraiser and to generate interest for the upcoming season. We're starting to think about that for 2021, just everything's the same, but shifted by a year. So then we'll see where it goes from there. But I want to give the Westerners board the first opportunity to use this, however they need to use it to maximize their interests.
Great. Well, I think we have 10 more minutes. So let's see if we have any questions from anyone who's online with us right now.
While you look, can I just comment on what Mark said about my happy feeling
Sure,
documentary?
yeah.
Thank you, Mark, because I love documentaries, but like it is depressing to watch documentaries. Like
Yes, it is.
I'm like, and I can really tolerate a lot of like darkness, but I was I bought a double exposure film festival pass last weekend to DC. It's all investigative journalism. And I have to like 4 documentaries. I'm like, my wife turned to me, she's like, please, no more. And we were not allowed to watch any more documentaries.
The world is bad in this way and in this way and in this way, and they're doing it to you. And no, man, people love to skate. People love to play baseball. And, so the positive thing, I just felt so good watching that.
And I think like that's what's exciting, right? Like I feel like you can make documentaries and they can still be uplifting. Like,
Sure.
There is doom and gloom, but there's also like real life happiness or the pursuit of it. So yeah.
And we just have to find the balance, because if we want things to change, we have to make documentaries about those types of issues. And yet it's kind of like the college essay. It's not just tell me about what's going wrong in your life. Show me where you've overcome adversity and things like that.
So yeah. Anyway, I feel you. I'm 100% with you.
So, so questions, if anyone has a question, there's a little chat icon at the bottom of the screen. You can just type in your question and I'll read it and then we'll answer. So if anyone has a burning question that they want to ask, you have a few minutes to get it out off your chest. So while we're waiting, tell me about, let's see, now I'm at a loss for words.
I actually have more questions for Angela, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, go right ahead.
You seem to be kind of where I want to be in filmmaking. I'm a rank beginner, and so it was hysterical that I didn't even have really any of the equipment to do this when I started. So I improvised a shoulder rig for a DSLR camera out of a cut down cross-country ski that I put on my shoulder and had some lead weights on the back. And the first time I showed up at the park, they must have looked at me like, who the hell is this guy? And so my wife finally said, look, if they're going to take you seriously as a filmmaker, we have to get you something that at least looks professional. So we did that. But tell me about how you got, who did the skating shots, and wasn't there a drone shot in the beginning where they're walking into an arena and stuff? Tell me something about the technical aspects.
Yeah, like I was limited to the fact that I worked mostly by myself. So, and to produce, direct, shoot, interview, everything by yourself, as it's very difficult, right? So occasionally I would bring somebody else with me, and those were like, when I did get the drone shots, or because I could not skate, I would give the camera to the skaters. So either we had like GoPros mounted on heads or chests, a little Osmo, this little handheld camera with a stabilizer, pretty good. I'd give that to a skater to skate with, so we can get some movement. And then I think one of my favorite shots is the last shot of the movie, which is Emily skating by herself, and it's in slow motion. And so that was like this rig that was really meant to be like for like a 360 camera, but we put a small mirrorless camera on there, and that's how we got that. But I hear you. It's hard to shoot sports, and because my skating was hard in a different way, because if you don't know the program, you don't know where people are going to land on the ice, right? So first you have to learn the program, then you're up against some of the technical issues, which rinks are really dark and people are moving really fast. So from like an aperture, and it's got to be in focus, right? So I had those things that I was up against. And then I couldn't shoot everything. Like when I was shooting the nationals, I wasn't allowed to shoot that. I had to like license that footage from US Figure Skating, which pains me because I would have liked the close-ups, because filming synchronous skating is very difficult. You want to see the whole the whole formation, but you
Right.
want to be close enough that you could see faces and expressions, right? So it was, we got better by the second year of me doing it. We definitely figured it out, but I wish I had shot it good from the beginning. So, but I hear you, it's hard, and to do it all yourself and not like, I'd be like, honestly, I look like a crazed woman. I shot a lot of the monopod just because I was standing for hours and I don't have like the upper body strength. So here I am running on the sidelines of a rink, and it'd be really cold sometimes. Like when I was with the Downeasters in upstate New York, that rink was like, there was no heat.
Yeah.
I had like all these jackets and gloves, and I hate the cold weather. So it was awful, but you do it to get the shot. But I gotta tell you, I was in a lot of miserable situations. Like I don't know how to drive in the snow. I learned how to drive in the snow with this movie. Like it was like scary. But anyway, I always say, if you're not scared, you're not living. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was in the path of lots of hot foul balls and stuff like that. And so I had, I'm watching this guy, but I have to pay attention. Is something coming at me from the other direction?
Right.
The weird thing about filming baseball is it is a lot of waiting, and then these flurries of action.
Yeah.
So when I downloaded, or when I transferred all of the footage in, I think I shot 0.5 terabyte of footage, and most of it is, the guy looks at a strike and nothing happens. Right. And you have to take that because he might have hit it out of the park. So it's all there, but so much of it is waiting to happen. And I feel really lucky that I was able to capture all the good moments that I did. Just like you got great shots of perfect routines, and you got a lot of flubs too. And I can't imagine how much you had to follow them to get all those things.
Right. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, for you, especially shooting by yourself a game, that's a lot of ground to cover too, right? Yes. So like I was small, you've got a whole field. So yeah, it ain't easy. It ain't easy, folks.
No.
Yeah, those are all really good points. I've done some shooting as well, and I've tried to cover soccer, and that's difficult when you're like behind the camera and you're trying to follow the ball and it's moving really fast. It's a huge challenge to do that. So congratulations to both of you.
Watching the technical quality of some of the films, all of the films on this, I can't even believe that I'm having the conversation and being in the same league with these, because obviously, and you probably experience this too. Every time I look at it, I say, oh, could have done that a little tighter. Oh, wish I had focused better, Yeah. But I guess if it's a good enough storytelling experience, then you can maybe forget about some of those things. And I came into it as you did from teaching. So I had the storytelling background. I had to learn the technical aspects. But, I guess if I can make people care about Andrew Jackson, I can make people care about the Westerners.
Absolutely. And I think people are forgiving. Like if the story is good, like you kind of forget all that other stuff, right? And honestly, it's just practice, because my God, it's just, it's like sometimes I'm like, am I going to obviously I want to make another film, but I'm sure you're exhausted, Mark. I feel like we've just been running a marathon for years, and part of me just needs to take a break. And I'm like, I don't know that I could do it again. I still need a minute. I haven't re-energized my batteries yet. Like I'm not ready to do it again, because it's hard. It's really
I think it's as close as we'll come to giving that what the athletes do on the playing field or on the ice. We did the same thing, but it was more mental energy with a kind of a physical side to it. Definitely.
Exactly. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. We're so glad to have your films at our festival, and definitely
really appreciative. Thank you very much for including it.
And we're looking forward to seeing more work from both of you. So keep it up, and keep us posted on what you're doing. And good luck to both of you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. We'll be back with another movie, hopefully, in a couple of years, both of us.
Great.
Angela, do you mind? I don't know. This is probably not being recorded, I hope, but do you mind if I email you from the link that we got for this? Because I'd like to keep in touch, definitely.